Nick, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a great pleasure, Visa.
You're going to talk to me about why I need to move to Spain.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been living here now for 19 years. I've written a book on Spain and how to move to Spain and property aspects. I'm also a realtor, so I deal day to day in property. And of course, I do quite a lot of work for House Hunters International and their programs in Spain. So I kind of know quite a bit about how this works.
It is so amazing. So where do you live in Spain, and how did you actually even end up living in Spain? You're from the
Right.
UK.
Absolutely. I'm British, and so I came more or less from London. And at the time, I was an equity trader. So the guy with two or three computers in front of him, sort of trading on the stock exchange. And the company I worked for said, we want to open a European office. I think for tax reasons, actually, more than anything else. And they said, would anyone like to move to Europe? Anywhere in Europe. And so we did some research. And we found this amazing part of Spain, which is on the east coast of Spain, which is where I live, just south of Valencia city, which is, if you like, drew a line across eastern Spain, you'd come to the Balearics Island. Um, and this is an area which is green, mountainous, got a fantastic climate. We've got the Mediterranean Sea, which everyone loves. So it was kind of the best place by almost by accident that we found to live in.
Wow, so amazing. So tell me your favorite reasons of why you love living in Spain. What makes it such a great place?
I have to say, it's a sort of overall quality of life. You can't just sort of take one thing. So moving out of the UK, which I guess is pretty like the States in a way, it's very hectic, it's very expensive, and our climate, perhaps like a lot of the States, is pretty horrible. So here we came as a family to this fantastic part of Spain, and we've discovered several very interesting things which we hadn't really appreciated. And one of those was that it was so cheap. And so having a young family, of course, it gets very expensive taking them out all the time. We all have that sort of problem. And all of a sudden, we found that we could go out for days at a time, or go out for a meal, or whatever. And it was just a fraction of the cost of the UK. And then we were living in this wonderful climate, a Mediterranean climate. So you're sitting on a terrace outside a bar, having what they call a menu del dia, the menu of the day, for about 10 euros, which is about $11, three-course meal with choices in between the courses, including a drink. And the great thing with Spain, it's so relaxed. They're not looking at different place settings, trying to get two or three people on your table. So you sit there for a couple of hours, this amazing meal. So that was nice. And then there was this, even coming from the UK, this safety aspect. Spain is fantabulously, ridiculously safe. It's so safe, Risa, that I worry for my kids that they've not grown up very streetwise. It's
Wow.
that
Is it because of the village that you live in, or is this kind of, cross country?
it's across the country, and it's mad. So many years ago, I was a soldier, so I'm not particularly frightened of things. But in the UK, for example, in many different places, and I bet it's the same in the States, you're walking down a road and you kind of cross the road because there's some oiks or some ne'er-do-wells, or you think three or four people on the side there, so I'm just going to cross the road, just to avoid any hassle. Now, my wife and myself haven't done that once in 19 years. Now, that's in the cities, that's in the towns, it's in the villages. And one of the things that's amazed me continually when I meet Americans, I have quite a lot of American clients. I love Americans. I'm a big sort of Americanophile, I suppose it is. And they keep on telling me, they say, they've got kind of PTSD. They're suffering from the fear of just being around other people. They might be assaulted or something like that. And we're kind of thinking, well, this is so foreign to us. There are no guns around here. I mean, people do some hunting, but I mean, to get a gun license is quite difficult. Uh, you don't have little groups of sort of ne'er-do-wells, people who are looking for trouble.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it's for a very profound reason, and quite a strange one, really, and it's because Spain remains a nuclear community, which means that, for example, the town that I'm in at the moment, speaking to you from, has got 80,000 people, so reasonably big for a Spanish town. But if you were born as a Spaniard in Gandia, you will do your schooling here, obviously, and then your intention will be to go to the nearest university around, which would be Valencia University, so a train ride up from Gandia. And then when you've qualified as a lawyer or nurse or accountant or whatever, the aim is to return to Gandia. And this is very strange. And in North European and American terms, you go to the university that's furthest away from home and you never really return. So we have this bonkers thing here, 80,000 people, and this is not unusual to Spanish towns, where in one building you'll find that you've got sort of grandfather and grandmother on one side, and then a flat a block away will be auntie and uncle and then some cousins. So everyone's all around, literally. And so one of the things, my theories, is that if you are behaving like a drunken 4-year-old, looking for a bit of bother or a bit of trouble, it's quite dodgy because Granny's going to come round the corner pushing the pram with a 4-year-old in, so you feel like a complete. There's an element of that, Risa. It's that, it's that tight community, and it's a very tight community. It's wonderful.
Wow. Yeah, no, I guess I can see that being the benefit. I mean, that's very popular in Latin culture, right? And in some Asian cultures as well, where, people are expected to come back uh, to the hometown or whatever it may be. But you're absolutely right. The US could be, that's like the other side of the spectrum. Um, but
And,
what about
and
like cost of living types of things, like to do your groceries and that sort of thing? How much do you have to budget for weekly groceries, for
well,
example?
if you look at weekly groceries, then they're probably the same cost probably anywhere in the world. I suspect, whether you're in Italy or North Africa or England or America, a loo roll a tin of beans is probably going to be much the same as anywhere else. But it's not really on that level that you start to save money. It's on eating and drinking out is incredibly cheap. It's also a curious thing here is that I think when you're living in a country like Spain, which is extremely relaxed. So, for example, I have one suit which I have worn twice in 19 years. So, in other words, you don't need to be buying fancy clothing because no one wears it. I haven't even put on a dinner jacket for 19 years.
Well, you're probably the luckier side, unless you're in, I guess, in fashion and you're in Madrid and, you know.
Well, maybe, but even the politicians, they're not wearing suits or ties and stuff like that. So it's much more relaxed. If you're living also in an outside environment, so the Spanish consider themselves like street people. They don't entertain in the house. They entertain in the bars and restaurants in the streets. Um, it's very much more relaxed. When you've got a terrific climate, you also tend not to spend so much. You don't need to spend so much. And I have a theory, Lisa, which you may cast out of the window very quickly, but I think certainly for us in the UK was an element of it, was you have consolation buying. In other words, you're living in this frenetic society, trying to sort of keep things going. Everything's expensive. You're working really hard. The weekend comes and you think, God, I really deserve to go out for a fantastic meal. I really deserve to go and buy a beautiful suit or a lovely dress. Of course, you spend the money. That's another 300-400 bucks gone. So next week, you've got to keep on working away. And when you're in somewhere like the Mediterranean, things are so much more relaxed that there isn't that need for consolation buying. So again, you're dropping your costs. Does this make any sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you just this is my dream, right? It's just a stripped down life. So tell me, Nick, what about housing costs?
Well, housing costs, like the annual tax, here's a huge difference between sort of here and the States. So I've got quite a large villa. It's 325 square meters, which I think we worked out, Risa, was how big?
3,500 square feet. So that's a big house.
Well, it's reasonably large, and but my annual tax on that is about $700, $750. Now, I know in America it's terribly complicated, your country, and I never quite get it right. So you've got all the differences between the states, but most Americans tell me that they'd be paying 10, 15, 20, even $30,000 a year on something of that size as the
Oh, yeah,
annual
yeah, for
tax.
sure.
Um, and this sort of raises the other thing about tax and the cost of living over here. There are a couple of scary bits which have become myths. One of them is that there's a wealth tax over here. Now, I know as an American you should be sort of running away and screaming communism and stuff like that. But actually, the wealth tax, my Texan friend said to me, is really only applicable if you're, and I quote, yacht wealthy. In which case, even then, you're going to be paying a tiny amount, so it's not very much. And then, of course, there's this kind of myth that the income tax, if you're paying it over in Spain, is terribly high. That sort of welfare state really taking all your money. But when I've looked at this with Spanish friends, there actually isn't much difference between the tax that you're going to be paying in Spain and the tax in the States, depending upon which state you're in, of course. Because by the time you take in your huge reduction in healthcare costs, and things like the cost of annual tax on a house, if you're paying 10, 20,000 less, any difference in income tax in the States, frankly, is very small. And Risa, I know you've been to Spain many times, and the great thing with Europe, of course, is when you buy a product in those shops, there's no sort of added tax. If it says it's 100 euros, which are $110 or whatever, that's what you're going to pay. You're not going to be paying, once you get to
No
till,
sales tax.
exactly no sales tax. And I've always felt very uncomfortable in the States when, I thought, aha, this is $100. That's good news. And I sort of get to the checkout and it sort of says, aha, you've got to pay more. So there's none of that. So in terms of overall cost of living, uh, I would like very strongly to try and get this perception to Americans that Europe isn't necessarily more expensive. Sometimes it can be significantly cheaper, despite us sort of having this welfare state, which I know goes a bit against the grain for many of you. To put it mildly. It's true, Risa, isn't it?
No, no, you're right. It is a very fundamental shift, but there's so many people who would just love to live in Europe, or in Spain, and I'm one of them. I've always loved, loved, loved Spain every single time I've gone there. Um, Now, kind of looking at the flip side, what would you say are your kind of the major adjustments or challenges you find of, living in Spain that one who is not from there would have to make?
Well, I guess the most obvious one is the language. You're moving into somewhere where the language is Spanish. So if you've got no Spanish, you would be rubbing your head and saying, "Gosh, this is a mountain to climb." Particularly when you're old. Like someone like me. I'm at sort of the dusk of life, as you can see, Risa.
Oh, stop it.
um, just about a keel over. I might get through this interview. So um, if we're both
Please don't
lucky.
do that.
Well, but the point is it's quite a it can be quite worrying to someone to think, gosh, I'm going to go to a linguistically different country and I don't speak the language. How the heck am I going to deal with that as sort of the first big mountain to climb? The reality is that 9 out of 10 of all the clients I have from around the world speak no Spanish at all. And I would say that 8 out of 10 after 10 years still speak no Spanish at all. And they've been living here full time. So there's two things here. One is that, you look at the language problem and think, my gosh, it's impossible. But actually someone like Spain or before our wretched pandemic, had about 78 million tourists a year coming to it. It's only got 46 million people living here. And so it's got a very good infrastructure for English language speakers, the lawyers, the doctors, the nurses, the accountants. You can find anything you want, or anyone you want, around pretty much speaking English in the banks. So all the services and infrastructure, because tourism is so important to Spain, has a sort of very good English language infrastructure, very important. So most of the people I know speak no Spanish. They've been here for 10, 15 years and been perfectly happy. So again, it's kind of one of those sort of strange myths. You know, it'd be very, very odd to sort of go to Brazil and be told you don't need to speak Portuguese. But in Spain, it's very different. You don't need to speak the language. Great if you do, not a problem if you don't. So that's one of the big minuses, or apparent minuses, I think.
Yeah, it's not right. It's just, I guess, a challenge for those who don't speak Spanish.
It's a challenge for those. The perception is it's a challenge, and in actual fact, what I say to most people about moving into somewhere like Spain, where there is a different language, albeit that you don't need it. Part of the fulfilling, fun bit of being in another country, particularly if you're not a linguist, and I'm not a linguist, is to learn another language. I mean, as a retired person, the joy I found in not being a linguist and then finding that I was being able to communicate well in another language, albeit it took me quite a long time, it was great. It was like, fun enough, it was icing on the top of the cake. It wasn't a minus, it was actually a plus. And we used to come back, my wife and I, from sort of a bar or meeting some Spanish friends, and we'd get back home and we'd say, do you know, we actually had a meal with someone in a different language, and we had a conversation.
Yeah, it's pretty
Reece,
amazing.
you probably speak many languages, but for the non-linguistic, this was like a huge jump. A great pleasure.
No, that's awesome. That's part of the reason why I love international travel, right? Is connecting with people who may not speak the same language, they're not from the same culture. You know, there's just something always amazingly magical about that. Um, so as we kind of wrap this up, I do want to hit upon popular destinations within Spain where you find foreigners kind of are attracted to visit,
Exactly.
not
Yeah,
to visit, but to live.
Reece, you're absolutely right, and Spain. I don't know America well enough, but Spain sort of has different delivery systems depending upon what you want. So, to give a broad description of Spain, you've got this almost this square at the end of the western end of Europe, of course, and you've got a coastal strip that really runs down the Mediterranean and down the east coast and the south coast. And then you come up onto this sort of altiplano, in the middle of which is Madrid, and literally in the middle. It's a bit like sort of Washington being in Kansas. You know, it's a very strange place to put your your main city. And so, what's developed over the years are, if you like, different delivery systems to suit what people want, which sounds a bit strange in a way. So, if you want a big city, which most retired people are not really looking for, then you would go to one of the three, which of course Madrid in the centre. You've got Barcelona up on the north east side of Spain, bordering the Mediterranean. You've got Valencia where I live, which is absolutely sexy city, Lisa, really really lovely. But actually, most people tend to sort of head for the Mediterranean coastal areas, because this is delivering the dream. You're right by the Mediterranean Sea, a blue sea. You know, it's absolutely fabulous. Very high, very well developed infrastructure for expatriates, because so many North Europeans come over, and English is the leading language. So you're looking really largely of where most people will retire to are on the coastal strips, either up in the north alongside Barcelona, which is the Costa Brava. My area, which is in sort of, forgive me, my area, which is the eastern middle part of Spain, the Valencia area, very green, very mountainous, really absolutely gorgeous, lovely beaches, or the southern coast, which you'll know, Risa, very well, the Costa del Sol, very famous. And this is where most people retire to. You're getting these great villas, wonderful way of life, gorgeous Mediterranean Sea, nuclear community, complete safety. And of course, as you well know, Risa, it's one of the healthiest places to live in the world.
Absolutely, yeah. It's quite, yeah, you have a lot of centenarians rather. Um,
Yes, we do. And I think in 2019, Spain will top the list of countries the sorry, it's topped the list of the healthiest countries to live in the world. I think the US, in the report I saw, was in a rather lowly 35th. So we have fantastic longevity here because we've got this climate, a fresh diet, very good food. Fast food, really, this is another strange thing, Lisa. Fast food had a really big problem getting into Spain. It took years and years for sort of McDonald's and Burger King to make any headway here. Because you go out even now for a McDonald's, and it's only a couple of dollars, $3 or $4 at the most, cheaper than having a three-course, freshly cooked menu del dia in the middle of the day.
right. So why would you do that?
So why would you go and get your Burger King? And so, in my country, you've got the Kentucky Fried Chickens everywhere you look and all your fast food stuff. Whereas over here, yes, you can get it, but it hasn't made the same progress. Thank heavens.
Nick, this has been so enlightening. I can't wait to go. We're going to have a nice siesta, a nice meal together. What do you call the meal during the day?
The menu del dia,
The
which
menu del dia. Together, and we'll have a three-course meal, and it'll be fabulous. But so if people want to hear more about you, where do they go online?
well, if you can come onto my website, which is casalasa4.com, or just look me up on nicholassnelling.com there. So either place is good, and I'll welcome any questions.